Hi, everybody. Brian Norcross here with an evening update on this Friday, August 21st, on what's going on in the tropics. We're looking, of course, at Tropical Storm Laura and its potential effect in South Florida and the Bahamas and the Caribbean islands, and then also Tropical Depression 14 and its potential effect on the Gulf Coast, including Texas and areas in the northern Gulf Coast. And both forecasts are fraught with problems here this afternoon in trying to pin down exactly what's going to happen. Let's talk about Laura first. 45-mile-an-hour winds is the estimate from the National Hurricane Center, but it is a messy-looking system. There's a cluster of thunderstorms here and another one here and another one over here and then something going on way out in front, and it doesn't look much like a tropical storm. Hurricane hunters are on the way out there. They'll be there early this evening, and we'll get a better reading on what's going on with this thing. Can't even hardly see the center. Hurricane Center estimating it being here 40 miles east of Antigua, but that's just an estimate waiting on information from the hurricane hunters. It may not even be a 45-mile-an-hour tropical storm at this point. Moving to the west, a little bit slower right now at 17, but it is forecast to increase its forward speed. So that's been the track. There's where it was going yesterday, north of the islands, and then it didn't move like this. It reformed down here earlier today, and now moving generally to the west is the best estimate. But if you can't see the center, it's really hard to make an estimate exactly the direction it's moving, but clearly that's the way, the general direction the clouds are moving. So when you have a really super disorganized system, trying to figure out what's going to happen downstream just is really impossible to pin it down because the computer models can't get a handle on it, and too many factors are in play that could either make it get stronger or make it get significantly weaker and maybe even just completely die out. All these things are on the table. All right, now in terms of where the winds are, such as they are, this is the estimate as of the 5 o'clock advisory that the tropical storm force winds, in other words, winds at least 40 miles per hour, extend 115 miles or so kind of to the northeast. So just remember that when we're looking at the cone, that the strong winds are north of the center. It's not about the center. It's about where the strongest winds are and potentially the heaviest rain is, and that is north of the center is the estimate right now, and that's expected to continue to be the case. What's going on out there? Well, there's a lot of dry air. We've been talking about all the browns are dry air in the middle levels of the atmosphere, and you can kind of make out that that dry air is kind of being pulled around into this thing, and that's why, look where the green is there. That's where the moisture is with the system, and you notice there's a lot of gaps in it. No doubt dry air is wrapping into the circulation. So if it is actually going to intensify, it's going to have to make a moisture bubble to push out that dry air. No guarantee that's going to happen since it has these big mountains here up ahead of it. Here are the computer models. Now, the computer models are not a whole lot different from yesterday. They were indicating yesterday that the center, this red one, is the one we look at. It's the consensus and the average, and it was indicating yesterday that the center was likely to be near the islands there, near the Dominican Republic and Haiti on the island of Hispaniola, near Cuba. These are where the mountains are on Cuba. This is where the big mountains are there on Hispaniola. So this is going to come very close to those big mountains, and the mountains are going to disrupt its circulation. So the Hurricane Center has now moved its track down there, that thinking that's the most likely thing is that will interact with those mountains. And if you notice, the other models really are not too terribly different, but some do still keep it a little farther to the north, and we just have to keep that in our mind as something of a possibility. So here's the cone. If you notice, the center line on the cone goes right down the middle of, right down the coast of those islands, very close to these mountains here. But what we have to allow for is the possibility, remember, that the worst weather is on that north side extending 100, 115 miles out, that sometimes when you get a strong cluster of thunderstorms out here like this, the center actually jumps up there. So we just have to keep that possibility in mind. Hurricane Center is thinking because the atmosphere looks so favorable, they're going to put a 60, 65 mile an hour forecast on here, bearing in mind that if the mountains really do disrupt it, it's just not going to be that strong, but there is some chance that it's just far enough offshore that we get some winds offshore here to the north that are in that 60, 65 mile an hour range. Then when it gets up near us on Monday, and this is going to be a Monday event here for Southeast Florida and for the Keys, notice the center way down here by Cuba, but the strong winds extend to the north. Remember, the worst weather is to the north. So certainly in the Keys and parts of South Dade, some of those strong winds are likely to come through. But for all of South Florida, I think we're going to find winds that are going to be quite high. And if you have a boat that is exposed to the open water, you're going to want to take precautions for strong winds, all onshore winds coming in this way. From the southeast and to the east eventually, or east to southeast actually, and you're just going to want to take action to be sure that you don't get caught. If you remember Hurricane Irma, that was a whole different kind of storm, of course, but the winds never really got to hurricane force over most of South Florida. Now, they lasted a lot longer. This is going to move through on Monday, but still, the winds are going to be significant. And we're going to have some, I think, power problems, and we're going to have some problems right on the water with these winds over the metropolitan area, probably in the 40 mile an hour range at least. Gusts over 40 or 50 miles an hour. In the Keys, maybe a little stronger. Again, not focusing on the center, focusing on that band of winds to the north of the center of the storm. And then it moves north. Now, the center of the cone now is heading toward New Orleans, but everybody up here is watching it because there's just so much uncertainty with the interaction with the mountains and this disorganized system as it stands right now. So everybody there on the Gulf Coast is watching that. And, of course, there's another storm. And, Mo, I have never seen this where you have overlapping cones. And could we have a hurricane here and here? This one doesn't get there till Wednesday. This one, according to the current timing, is Monday. Maybe with that much difference in time, yes. If they arrive at a similar time, no. The wind fields would interact with each other. This one would tend to want to kick off to this direction. This would want to kick off in that direction. But now that this one, 14, Tropical Depression 14, is slowing down, maybe, or it's changing its rate of speed, and Laura is slowing down some, maybe this one gets up there soon enough that it doesn't really interact with Laura. They notice the timetables here are different by a couple of days, but it's really unusual to have two that close together. Not unheard of, a couple of days apart, but it is indeed unusual. And Laura forecast to be a Category 1 hurricane, again, based on what happens with the mountains and whether it ever gets its act together. This one forecast to be a strong storm too, but unfavorable upper-level winds are forecast to impact it as it's getting near the Texas coast. So we'll see how that works out. Talking about Tropical Depression 14, here it is now. It's also got dry air associated with it. It's not a well-developed system. Seems like it ought to be better developed. The atmosphere down there actually looks quite favorable here in the Caribbean. But it's a no-go so far with Tropical Depression 14. All right, let's take a look at the cone on this one. National Hurricane Center thinking based on the fact that the atmosphere looks quite favorable for strength, and it's going to do that. It's not even going to run over much land now, so they're slowly increasing it up to a Category 1, as we were talking about here, approaching the Texas coast. But a lot of uncertainty, and when you look at the models, boy, you can see it. Look at them. Some come way down over here into Mexico, others here into Louisiana. So as I've been saying, Texas and Louisiana need to pay attention to what's going on with this. A lot of uncertainty based on the fact it's really just not getting its act together, perhaps interacting with a little bit of the Yucatan Peninsula now. It's just not behaving the way the computer forecast models have said it would. So two storms heading for the Gulf. Our concern here in South Florida, of course, is Laura, and it does odds favor highly that this will not be a strong event, but that it will be a disruptive event for some of us coming up on Monday. All right, back with more as we get information. Of course, Local 10 anytime on local10.com and the newscasts on Channel 10 here in South Florida. All right, we'll see you soon. Take care.